Emmajean, Johnson, McCarter, Reeves,
What were your parents' names?
Tommy and Ollie Johnson.
And when and where were you born?
I was born in Prentiss County, 1929.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have one brother and three sisters.
And what are their names?
Herlin, Willadine, Jaretta, and James Thomas.
And when and where were they born?
They were all born in Prentiss County. We were all born in our mother's parents' house.
Do you have any special memories of your brothers and sisters growing up?
Yes, we were pretty close. Me and my oldest sister, of course, back then, Mom and Dad never had a car while I was at home. If we went anywhere, like the school bus had to run and we'd go on the school bus, or we would go with friends or something like that. And we were, I guess, me and Herlin was closer than any of the other children because we were older and the others were younger. So where one of us went, the other one went. We had friends in the community, and we would get together like on Saturday nights and play games, and we had a lot of fun, even if we didn't have much.
What kind of games did you play?
Well, when we got older, we had this guy, he was a distant cousin. He would, they had, back then they had a game they called coffee, and it was kind of like a dancing, square dancing thing. You would round up, and they called it the coffee thing, and he'd tell you do-si-do, and like that. And we played that a lot after we got older.
Did you know your grandparents?
Yes, I didn't know my daddy's daddy. I knew his mother, but I didn't know his daddy.
What were their names?
Uh, we always called Daddy's mother Granny Bolton. Of course, her first husband died, and then she married Mr. Andrew Bolton, and I never knew him either. But Mama's daddy and mother was Russell and Almeida Boggs. We lived close to them most of my growing up.
Can you tell me about a place that made you happiest?
Well, I guess when we lived at Grandpa's was actually our happiest place because we knew more people around there and everything.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a nurse.
And what historical events do you remember from the time you were growing up?
Oh, I don't really know because I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing I can remember that was kind of stands out when me and Herlin was small. There was this guy that was carrying his school bus to Memphis Zoo one weekend, and Grandpa and Grandma went, and they carried me and Herlin to the zoo at Memphis. And that's the only trip I ever remember we had or anything when I was growing up. But I married when I was 16.
Oh, wow.
I didn't finish high school.
Okay.
When me and my husband married, he was 6 years older than me. And he meant for me to go on to school. But he was working in Memphis, and I didn't want to go to school in Memphis, so I was going to stay down here and go to school. But I decided I didn't want to, so I didn't go. I came back and stayed I don't remember if it was 1 week or 2 weeks that summer, and canned vegetables and things for us. And I went to school one day to visit. And that's the only day I went to school after I married.
Was it a high school that you looked into when you were there?
Yes, I went to New South High School. Yeah, I finished the 10th grade.
Okay. And while you were in Memphis, you said you
I
visited the
worked.
school? Or,
No, I came back down here and visited at New Site.
okay.
But when we lived in Memphis, I first worked at Woolworth dime store. Then I worked at Cress, and he worked for General Motors parts division, and it went on strike. So that was during World War II, 1945. So we moved back down here. He and his brother owned 80 acres of land, and it didn't have a house on it. But anyway, we moved back down here to Boonville, and him and his brother built a house on the 80 acres of land, and then we moved in the house where they built and lived there for, well, we had our first son while we lived there in 1946.
How did you meet your spouse?
Well, it's kind of odd in a way, but when my brother was born, we was staying at my grandpa's house, at Mama's mother and daddy. And he was born there, and we was riding the school bus, and my husband had moved into that community and started to school at New Site too. Well, I met him then, but then years, I mean, we never dated for several years after that. In fact, he dated one of my friends, my best girlfriend, for a while. And then he left home and went working away from home and everything. He first went to Alabama and worked on the arsenal up at Alabama and came back. And then, I don't know, we just kind of got together and we didn't go together. He was working in Memphis, though, when we got together and married.
So, did you date before you got married?
Yes. In fact, I dated my last husband before I ever dated my first husband.
Oh, what did you like most about him?
My first husband. Well, he was a real jolly fellow. He made music, could sing, and while we dated, he had a brother-in-law that made music too, and we'd go to their house and they'd make music and sing, and so we just we never went to
Fun.
but one movie before we married.
Do you have any children with your first husband?
Yes,
What are their names?
Joe, Brenda, and Tim.
You said Tim.
Tim, Tim. In fact, he's leaving today for Fiji.
Oh wow. So what about, did you have children in the second marriage?
No,
No. And then you had a third marriage?
no,
No.
just two.
Just two. Oh, okay. How did you decide to name your children?
Well, my first husband said he never liked his name. It was Travis Quitman, and he didn't like that. And he didn't want to name his children after him. So I can't really remember how we decided on Joseph Edwin is what his full name is. Now, I don't actually remember how we decided to name him that. And Brenda, Joe named Brenda. He was, I guess, 6 years old when she was born, and so he named Brenda,
Sweet.
Brenda Carroll.
What was something funny or embarrassing your child said at an early age that you'll never forget?
Well, I can't remember about Joe or But Brenda, I know we were in Boonville one time, and we were sitting in the car, and she sneezed. And I said, well, Brenda, she said, well, Mother, I just had to scat. And Tim, we were driving along one time, and he was noticed the power lines. He said, that spells my name, Tim. The way I guess the insulators or whatever, I don't remember now just exactly what it was, but he was watching the lines, and he thought, well, that spells my name.
Did you celebrate holidays growing up or in your adulthood?
Yes, we've celebrated Christmas, so
Do you have any special tradition that you keep during the holidays?
yes, I always have family for Christmas, Thanksgiving, and 4th of July. I have 3 a year.
Is there, when you were growing up, is there a memory that stands out more than any other?
I guess I remember one Christmas we went to Daddy's uncle's, Uncle Cleve Johnson. He lived down close to Siloam, and we spent Christmas Eve night with them. And they had 3 sons. I don't remember if they were all at home or not, but I do. They had 3 sons and a daughter, and the daughter was still at home. Of course, she was kind of our age. But that night, the youngest son, his mother put him under the bed and had him to hold his hands up like that, and she put a sheet over it and tied it, made it look like a head, and she would ask him questions. Of course, it's just yes and no, and he'd nod for yes and no for no, like that. She called him the dumb Betty, is what she called him, and that's the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. So we kind of had fun with that.
Oh, yeah. What was the best part of raising your family?
Well, I really don't know if I have a best part or not because I enjoyed all of it. We were close,
Mm-hmm.
but I did enjoy sending them to school and the school functions and things like that. Our oldest son, he didn't he didn't play ball other than baseball, but they didn't really have a regular team. He just played at school. But then our youngest son played basketball, and of course we went to all of the games with him and everything. And one year he got the award for being let me think, the best sport, I believe. Anyway, it it turned out what it actually meant. He had the best sportsmanship of any of them. I can't remember what the award was, but anyway, it was something about being the best sport.
What do you think's different about kids growing up today from when you were growing up?
They have too much electronics. We didn't have any. What we did, we invented our own games or played, and now most of them, all they do is with their texts and video games and things like that. They don't get
Mm-hmm.
outside like we did.
That's true. Are there any stories about the origins of your family name?
Not that I know of. I don't even know where my daddy's family How they came here, I have no idea.
Wow.
I don't know if anybody has any records of it or not, but I don't. And I really don't know about mamas.
Which which parent do you think you're like? Either of your parents, your mother or father, um, things in
I
common?
preferred my daddy's family.
Yeah.
Mama didn't have as many family members. She only had one brother.
Mm.
And they were not as close as daddy's family was.
Do you know what was most important to your parents?
I know what was most important to daddy, but mama wasn't outgoing like daddy was. But his family, daddy's family, is what meant to him. He really loved his family.
What kind of talents do you have?
Well, I don't know if you'd call them talents or not, but I've always liked to sew.
That's a talent.
Anything with my fingers.
Do you have any special sayings or expressions that you use?
I don't guess I do.
No.
Not really.
So, what kind of things bring you the most joy now?
Staying busy.
What
I
about when
love I love to quilt. I love to piece quilts, and I love to do jigsaw puzzles, and I love to read. So I stay busy. I like being with family too. I mean, that's enjoyable.
if you could travel into the future, what message would you give to young people?
I really don't know. There's a lot of advice they need. One thing would be good, get a good education and try to know your family and stay close with them.
What's your typical day like?
Well, I really don't have nothing special that I do every day. When I get up of the morning, I just whatever comes handy, that's what I do.
What do you do for fun, Ouida?
Well, it's fun to me when I'm quilting, piecing quilts or whatever. Just and I enjoy going to church. I love my church family and being with the family when they come. We all enjoy it.
Some ages we reach uh, and we don't look forward to. What age were you less excited about and why?
Do you know? I don't really know if. I guess when I turned 16 was really the most exciting because I thought, well, when you get 16, you're sweet 16.
If, if you could go back to any age, would that be 16 again?
No,
No?
I don't think I'd like to relive my life. I've enjoyed my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm happy with my life. So I don't think I'd go back to any age. I'm proud of every year I've got.
What are your concerns for the future?
That I can stay healthy enough to take care of myself and not have to depend on nobody else. I want to be independent.
So I'm moving into life lessons and legacies. What's your most cherished family tradition and why is it important?
Well, I guess the holidays when we all get together and seem like everybody enjoys it. And it doesn't make me nervous how many is here or what. I just let them do whatever, take care of themselves. And they always seem like they enjoy it, and I do too.
Great. So I have one question. It's a life lesson legacy question, more for uh, sharing your knowledge and wisdom about any difficult situation you had and how you dealt with it.
I guess when my first husband had his first stroke, because he wasn't able to do things that he had done in the past. And I knew that it was my turn to do more and take care of things. He lived 6 years after he had his first stroke. Of course, he wasn't down disabled or anything like that, but he still he kept had a few cows and had some goats and had his dogs, and he took care of all of that. But a lot of I guess you could say the business part, I did that. And I would advise any young person to try to be where that if something like that happened, they could take over and do whatever needed to be done.
What's been the most influential experiences of your life?
I guess my parents teaching me to work and not depend on someone else for your living.
Is there any person or situation from when you were growing up that had a profound effect on the way you looked at life? Did it change how you looked at life?
No, I don't think so.
Uh, if you were writing the story of your life, how would you divide it into chapters? That's a pretty interesting question, I think.
It is. But I guess it would be childhood and then like teenagers and then adult.
What, if anything, would you have done differently in your life?
I would have got a better education.
What do you know now that you wish you were knew when you were young?
I don't really know if there's really anything that I would.
Over time, have you changed the way you look at life for people, or have
Yes,
yeah?
I think so.
I like this one. What advice had your parents or grandparent given you that you remember best?
Well, I guess it was before I married that if I'm going to marry, I need to stay married. If you, the saying back then was, if you make your bed hard, lay in it.
What's the best advice you can give for living?
Try to not do things that injure your health and stay as healthy as possible.
If a young person came to you asking, what's the most important thing for living a good life, what would you say?
I don't really know what I'd say. I would try to advise them to live a good, clean life.
That goes into my next
Uh,
question. How do you define a good life or a successful life?
well, I think people should enjoy life, but not do things that would cause them to maybe be in trouble or not enjoy it. And I would advise anyone to try to live a Christian life because you never know when your time's coming.
Do you think a person needs to overcome serious setbacks or challenges to truly be successful?
Yes.
In what way is it important to know your limitations in life or career?
Read that again.
In what way is it important to know your limitations in your life or career?
Well, you need to know what you can do and what you can't do. Because you can take on more than what you can handle.
Is there any thing like grandchildren or anything you want to talk about? This is kind of the point where we're wrapping up my interview process.
Well, I love all my grandchildren. They, some say, well, I'm partial, but I'm not. I may, there's some, you have to treat some, you can't treat them all exactly alike because they're all different. But I love all of them. They've all lived with me except one. And of course, he's in New York, so he hadn't lived with me. But uh, the oldest one, he lived here. Of course, his mother and daddy separated, and he lived here. And then the second one, same thing happened to him, and he didn't live as long as the others did. But Brenda's three children, they lived here for several years, and they feel close to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I do them. They're just like my own children because we just practically raised them. But I don't love them any more than I do the others. They're all the same. But I guess I am different by them because they have different personalities.
How many grandchildren do you have?
Well, I had seven, but one of them got killed. So
Right.
I just have the 6. I have 3 boys, 2 girls. I didn't have but 6. I don't guess 3. No, that's right. 7. Yeah.
About great grandchildren.
Great grandchildren. I really can't remember how many great grandchildren I've got. Let's see. Brent's got 3. Sonia's got 4. So I guess that's, yeah, Sonia's got 4. 7. I guess I've got 7 great. And I've got 5 great great.
That's what I was going to ask next,
Yeah.
is how many great
5
greats you
great
had, because I
great.
know I've seen some pictures
Yeah.
online with them.
So the barn out back,
Hmm.
who built that?
Who built it?
Yeah,
My first husband,
Travis.
that Travis did.
So tell me about Travis. I mean, how tall was he?
He was 5'10".
Okay. And do you have like a first memory of Travis?
Yes, I do. I remember the first time I ever saw him. It was on the school bus. He had moved in the community and started school where I was going. It was on the school bus, I remember. And I don't remember who had it, but somebody had a juice harp. You know what they are? And he was playing that juice harp.
Did he have a favorite song to sing?
Yes, but I can't remember the. I can remember some of the words in it, but I can't remember the name of it.
Can you sing some of it?
I don't know if I can remember it right now or not, but I know in the song it said something to the effect of, "My love is true." And when he was singing that, he looked at me and said, "How about you?"
Aw. Have to see if we can find that.
When did you get married?
April the 21st, 1945.
What were Travis's parents like?
What was
Travis's parents?
uh, his daddy's name was, well, his mother called him Tommy. It was Thomas, just like mine was. And his mother's name was Nancy McCarter. McCarter, like McCollum.
So did he played a lot of instruments or?
No, he didn't play a lot. Mostly the guitar was what he did. He could pick a mandolin a little bit, but it was mostly guitar.
And when did he have his stroke?
1995,
And when did he pass away?
2001.
So she asked you if your outlook on the way you look at people has changed.
Uh-huh.
How has it changed?
How has it changed? Well, I don't hardly know how to word that. People seem like are less concerned about things than they used to be, for one thing. And there's so much more convenience nowadays than they used to be that it's just seems like a whole different world.
So what's the story with the pickup truck out there?
Um, that is not. I mean, I don't really have one for that because that belonged to my grandson. He brought them in here when he was staying, when he was living here, and of course he never has moved, so they're still here.
Okay. a silo out back.
Well, now my husband did. Travis did build that when he was farming. That was for grain, soybeans, and it was down. We lived down in the the flats. We called it a lower place, and it was down there. But after we moved up here, well, then he moved it up here for us to have for an outbuilding, just storage and what have you.
And the other two
Yeah,
for the same thing.
well, the furthest one down that was built for a farrowing house. He had hogs and raised pigs, and it was for he had each.
So you mean the
The,
ones that are buried out there?
the little one that's where he kept his feed. It was
Okay.
for
The brick one?
that's a well house.
Oh,
The, yeah, they was at that time they was we didn't have you know water. It was a well. There's a well out there, and it came from that deep well.
okay.
Yeah.
Can you think of any other games that you played on Saturday night?
Yes, we played. I can't remember the name of them, but we played some games that. Anyway, it'd be like the boy would have to pick a girl to go. They'd take a walk, come back, and things like that. I can't remember the name of it.
Do you have any idea why you got named Ouida?
No, I really don't. I know why I got the Emmajean.
Okay.
Daddy had some friends. Her name was Emmajean. He and one of his cousins was real close. His name was Luther Gehagen. And Luther was dating a girl. Her name was Dorsey Farr. And she had this sister. She was a half sister. And her name was Emmajean Franks. And Daddy wanted to name me Emmajean. And Mama didn't like Emmajean. She didn't like the lady. So she wouldn't name me Emmajean. She put Emmajean instead of Emmajean.
So, tell me about the clock up here.
Well, when I was real small, of course, back then, girls had, we called them playhouses. We built out in the yard, and around, had our little dishes and things. And I told my grandmother, I said, when you get through with that clock, I want you to let me have it to put in my playhouse. Well, years and years later, after her husband died, she stayed with my mother some and with her son. She had the only two kids. And the clock was at my mother's. And it wouldn't run at that time. I don't know what had happened to it. But anyway, it was on the mantle where my mother and Daddy lived. And we were over there one Sunday. And she said, Ouida, you can take that clock home with you anytime you want to. So I got it, and I carried it and had it fixed, and it still runs.
Do you know how old it is?
It's over 100 years old, but I don't know how much. Because she got it not too long after her and her husband married, I'm sure.
What church do you go to?
Zion Rest Church of Christ.
Where is that at?
It's over toward Marietta on the number 370 over there. I think you turn at the Hobo and go toward Marietta, down there on the right.
What was the name of the church again?
Zion Rest, Zionrest.
So, when did you meet your second husband?
Well, I met him before I ever married my first husband. Years ago in Boonville, they had what they called a singing convention every third weekend in May, and I was there. And me and this girl was together, And he had been dating this girl that I was with. She was a friend of mine, and I had gone to school with her. And him and I don't remember who he was with at the time, but anyway, they, of course, the young people, they didn't go to the singing convention for the singing. They went to just being, you walked around and around and around the block there in town. And we met up with them. And she introduced me to him. So from that, we just started dating. And there was a school bus that came by the house where we lived on Saturday to carrying people to town. And I'd go to town on Saturday and meet him, and we'd go to the movie. And then I don't, that was in May. Well, in July, he had to leave for the Army. And there was a gospel meeting going on over there at church, not too far from where we lived at that time. It was called Little Brown. And he got this guy to bring him. He didn't have a car. So he got this guy to bring him up there. And I was there at church too. And that was the night before he left to go to service. And back then, you walked home with the girls. You didn't take them home in the car, and you walked home with them. So he walked home with me. And then he left the next day for service. We wrote while he was in service, but then he went overseas, and we just kind of lost contact. And two, I thought he really liked this girl that introduced me to him because he had gone with her before. But they'd go together, and they'd break up, and then just back and forth. So during that meantime, in December, Travis and I started dating. And I just kind of like quit because I didn't think anything about. I liked Gene, okay. I mean, we had a lot of fun together and everything, but it just, well, I wasn't even thinking about marrying him at that time because I wasn't but 14. He thought I was 16, but I wasn't but 14. And so then he he got wounded, of course, lost part of his foot. And he didn't come back to the States till in January. Well, of course, I was already dating Travis. We wasn't engaged at that time because we didn't get engaged till in March. But I never did see him or anything. But this girl at school told me, said she lived close to him, and said he said he'd give $500 to see you. I said, well, he could see me cheaper than that. So anyway, I still never did see him or anything. So him and the girl that introduced me to him married in April the 7th of 45, and Travis and I married April the 21st of 45. So it rocked on like that. I didn't see him. He worked in Boonville. He was a mechanic at one of the places in town. And I worked in town, but I never did see him. His wife worked at Fred's store there in town. I'd see her, but I never did see him. Then, of course, Travis died in '01. Well, I didn't even think about marrying anymore. I was okay. I just went ahead doing what we had done before he died and everything, and was working. Well, one Sunday evening it was in September. His wife died in May. In September, he called me one Sunday afternoon. He had had a lot of health problems and had to retire from work and everything. And his wife had been in the nursing home for over 4 years. She had Alzheimer's and didn't even know him or anything. But anyway, she passed away in May. He called me in December thinking that I was with her when he met her, but I wasn't. But it was at another one of the singings, but it was over at East Prentice when he met her. And I knew a lot of people he knew, and he knew a lot of people that I knew and everything, and we just got started talking. And then we started going to eat together and everything. So he finally did. I thought, well, I laughed until I said, I prayed you would never ask me to marry you. But finally at last, we was real close, and we had a lot of fun too. So he said, he asked me one day, said, would you marry me and me with health problems I've got? I said, I don't know. So it kept on and kept on. Well, he wanted to get me a ring. Finally, I gave in. And so she must have been like that too. So we married then. Well, we had been, I guess you could say, been together for over a year. We married in September. And we had been talking and going to eat and everything. And he, of course, me and my sisters and brother, we was going to eat then, and he'd go with us. And he had us out at his house one time. He made a lot of stuff, well, little stuff like, let me see, well, that little cross thing back there under them little crosses like that, and them little chairs out of the horses' shoes. He made stuff like that a lot. And so he had a lot of that sitting out. And he even made covered wagons and things like that. He made a lot of stuff. He was real talented on, stuff like that. And he had it all sitting out for my family to see that night when we went up there. And his daughter-in-law, she was there to kind of help. And so then we got married in September, the 24th day of September. That was Travis's birthday, was the 24th of September, and we married on his birthday. And that's our wedding picture there. So he lived 2 years, 2 months, and 12 days till he passed away. And he just, well, he never did get up when I did every morning. I'd get up and cook breakfast, and he'd usually get up before I got. So I had went to the bathroom, and from some reason he got up that morning while I was still in the bathroom, and I heard him. He fell, and he fell dead in that bathroom right there. He just opened the door and just fell in. Had a heart attack, just sudden.
And his name was Gene?
Gene. Mm-hmm.
What was his
Gene
name?
Reeves. Reeves. He had 4 children. Had 2 boys and 2 girls. And all the children said that if he hadn't have married me, he wouldn't have lived 6 months because he was grieving himself to death.
So Gene's first wife, what was her name?
Mildred. Mildred Armstrong.
What was her first car?
Our first car was a Model A Ford.
Those were popular. Was it black?
Travis had that when we married.
Was it black?
Black. Mm-hmm. 4-door.
Herlin too.
It was.
Yeah.
Their first car was a Model A.
So when did you first get electricity?
That was 1950, I believe. We didn't have it when they built the house that I was talking about them, we didn't have it there, and we moved from there over to a place over close to Hills Chapel. It was called Marvin Breedlove's place, and we had electricity when we moved over there. So that was 1950.
So was it just electric lights or?
Yeah, we had electric lights. And of course, we didn't, well, we had a radio, but because we had had a battery radio when we lived over there at Blythe Chapel, but when we moved over there, we had electric radio. And I got electric iron, and I had a gas iron before we moved to where we had electricity.
Gas iron.
A gas iron. You had to have white gasoline for it. You could buy it at some of the places, and
You guys teach me the weirdest things. I've never even heard of a gas iron before.
Either.
well, I had one.
Did you have a favorite radio show?
I usually like the country music radio shows.
Do you remember anyone in particular?
No, not really. I don't.
Do you have a favorite song?
No, I don't actually. I like all songs.
When did you get a television first?
Well, I can't even remember. It was in the I guess in the late 60s, but I don't remember what year. I know we didn't have one till we moved up here. We moved up here in 65 from down there. Yeah, we moved here. And Dean and her husband, first husband, they lived in Memphis. And they had got a new TV, and her husband wanted to give Tim their old TV, and did. And I think it was in the late 60s, but I'm not sure. But then later on, we bought one. I don't remember what year we bought one, but
Do you still have one of Travis's guitars?
well, it's one that I think he bought it at an auction. I'm not sure, but it was kind of run down, and two of the grandkids took it and refinished it and everything, and I've still got it. It's up in the closet back there. It wasn't his original one. I don't know what he did with his original one. I really don't know. Don't remember.
Did you have a favorite kid?
No,
No?
they were all special. But I will say this, Tim was our easiest one. He wasn't, Joe, he liked to be gone and going somewhere, being involved with other young people, and Brenda did too. But Tim, he picked the guitar, and that room back there on the left, that was his bedroom. He'd go back there and sit in that chair with that old guitar, and he was as happy as he could be. He didn't have to be involved with, now he loved basketball, and went to every game, but as far as that, he didn't have to be with anybody. He could just entertain himself.
Is that his basketball goal out there?
No, that was the grandson's. He had one, but it was out here in the front yard. Tim's was. But that was the grandson back there. No, that was the grandson. He had one, but it was out here in the front yard. Tim's was. But that was the grandson back there.
Not all got about an hour.
It's been about an hour.
Yep.
Good.
Okay.
So, how long were you out front?
Oh, 20 minutes or so total.
20 minutes outside. Did you get any of the pictures inside?
Yeah, almost all of them. I didn't stop and get any.
Okay.
Who's that?
That's Joe. That's the oldest son. He ran for supervisor one year. That was a picture he had made, put in the paper for his announcement.
Okay. So I want to get a good picture of. And that's Travis, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
And this is you and Travis?
yes.
And that's you
Min
and
Jean.
Jean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
And that picture right down there, well, I've got my, no, one up there on the left. Yeah,
That,
that was me.
that's you?
That's me. That's what I looked like when I when I was
Wow.
dating.
Wow. Well, you
I've
did it honestly.
changed quite a bit.
Why? Do you see similarities?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Whole family of hotties. My 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 mother, her mother. We've got pictures of her when she was in her teens and stuff.
Oh,
And well, her 20s and 30s. And I hate to say it, but that woman was a bat. She was just ugly. So funny, just hilarious. I mean, just and my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, my mother's father, when he was younger, he just looked like some kind of a. They had a little money. They lost his family lost all their money in the depression.
oh,
Yeah, but he always dressed and always looked like, I mean, you could have just taken a picture of him and slid it into some kind of a Chicago mobster thing, and
really?
he would have fit right in because he always dressed like that and looked like that. He was a good looking guy. And then my grandmother is just, people look at those pictures and go, what? What is this?
Oh,
Get a closer look here of this.
Turn that off. Oh, that's terrible.
Too dark?
Yeah. Okay, turn it back on. Oh, now you did it. Okay.
You got a trick switch here, Ouida?
no, one's for the front. That
Oh,
one.
okay. That one was for the. Okay. Got it. That's such a sweet picture.
Well, that was made the same year that Travis and I married. I think it was made before we got married in April, sometime that the fall before Travis and I married. Of course, I wrote to some guys in service. In fact, I had a classmate that when we were in grammar school, we were boyfriend, girlfriend. we wrote little notes, and things like that. And like I was talking about us getting together on Saturday nights, he lived, well, we called it the Sanders Farm, back over there. It's on number 4 highway. But he could come back through the woods, and him and the boy that I was friends with, his sister, they were friends. He and her brother were friends. And he'd come over there, too. And we'd all be together, and we'd just, a lot of times, just get out and go to somebody's house, and just, and of course, me and him would be together. And then he went to service. He was in the Navy, and we wrote. But that fall, William and Sybil came out. They always came out to Mississippi in the fall to get cotton pickers. So Herlin always said she didn't know why in the world Mama let me go, but I went home with them to pick cotton in Missouri. Stayed 2 weeks. And when came back, and then, of course, I started school. And then in December, I think we came back I believe it was November when we came back. But anyway, back then, when I was going to school, we had summer school
My bag on the outside pocket.
and fall too. We would go, well, back then, school would close in April, and we'd be out till July, and then we'd go work about 2 months, then be out for pick cotton, like, and so in November, I think, when we came back from Missouri, and then in December, I hadn't really, of course, now Travis had been in our group for a lot when he'd be at home, and everything. And he bought a little old car while he lived in Alabama. It was a little old one-seated, it was a Chevrolet. I don't remember. It seemed like it was about a 32 model. But anyway, it had a rumble seat in it. And one time, I remember I think it's 9 or 10 of us in that little old car. Because he's the only one that had a car.
Right.
And we'd pile in it and everything to go to somebody else's house, play. Well, one Saturday night, I wasn't even thinking about it. He and my first cousin came to our house, wanting me to go to a party down in what we call Sugar Flats. That's down below Siloam, back down in there. And said that they had already come by my girlfriend's house, and she couldn't go without I went, because her parents wouldn't let her go with just them 2 boys. And so well, Mom and Daddy let me go. So I got in the car and we go back to get her. And it was kind of funny. Travis, he was dressed up. He had on his suit and everything. So when we got over there, of course, he had dated her before, and I knew about it and all. And I thought, well, I guess he won't be. So I said something about getting back. He said, you just sit where you are. I thought, well, okay. So that was our first time being together, and from then on we started dating. He was working in Memphis, but he'd come home on the weekend, and so then we got married in April.
That's sweet.
It was kind of funny. Of course, I wasn't but 16, so Daddy had to sign for me to get married. And Travis told me what he said.
Oh.
He said, well, of course, Travis was 20. He was 21 when we married. Part of the year he was 5 years older than me, and part of the year he was 6. I think's the way it was. But anyway, when we had our birthdays, Daddy said, well, said, I will sign since it's you. But said, if you was one of these little old soldiers running around here, said, I wouldn't sign. So I guess it wouldn't have done no good if Gene had asked him to sign. And back then, oh,
That's funny. So he wanted you to marry someone local. Is that what
well,
it was?
Somebody he
and
knew.
Someone you knew?
that,
Yeah.
of course, he had known Travis for, because he had lived in the, well, not right in our community, but he kind of knew, that he was a good boy, could work and make a
Mhm.
living and everything. So he didn't care for me marrying him.
That's neat.
Well, it's pretty clear he made a good choice.
Yeah.
I used to tell Grandma Vera all the time. She used to be on me all the time about getting married. You need to settle down and get married. Because I had the twins, and
Yeah.
one day I said, Grandma, I'm not getting married unless A, the guy's never been married, B, has no children, and C, treats me like a princess.
Oh.
And then he chased me for like 12 years.
Never been married, no kids, treat her like a princess.
So you lucked up
He
too.
met my standards. Kind,
Right.
funny, sweet, smart, electronically in tune with electronics,
Right.
unlike me. Yeah, she really liked Lauren.
Good.
She'd send him a birthday card
Oh,
every
really?
year. Yeah.
Well, it's good when you marry someone that the family accepts.
Yes.
I've never, being me, I've never had a problem with that. I always dated girls and then met their parents, and their parents were like, what are you,
Oh,
I don't know, what are you, crazy?
you don't have to put that back. Just leave it
No,
out.
I'll go put it
'Cause
back, it's fine.
I have been really blessed. It wasn't easy at first, let me tell you, man. There were some growing pains.
well, I said I guess I was lucky. I told some
Mm-hmm.
of them I never dated but two boys that I would marry, and I married both of them.
Lauren and Lindsay, they used to always say the funniest things. Like, it was inappropriate, but it was funny at the same time.
Right.
Because they would say, how they were teenagers. They were like 14, 16, 17 in those years.
Yeah.
And they had known Lauren since they were little. And in fact, I dated another Lauren for 3.5 years.
Really?
Yeah. And they used to always say, Mom, he wants your nuts. I was like, stop! Don't say that. What's wrong with you? But they used to always say something funny. And so, yeah, we got together. And then my one memory I'm going to share, well, not memory, but it's something I'm going to remember for a long time, was Violet. She's 3 years old. And she likes building with her Legos. And she really likes these trolls that came out again with the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I told you this or not. In the Trolls movie, her favorite troll is Poppy. So she builds this little Lego house and doing her thing, and then she's taking Poppy around the house, and she takes Poppy and puts Poppy in the bathroom. It's time to go to the bathroom, Poppy. Goes in there and
Oh.
then lifts Poppy up and says, "Holy cow, Mom, do you see that huge turd in there?"
Oh.
I thought, oh my goodness, I am going to remember that, and I'm going to remind her of that when she's older. That's
Oh.
just,
Too funny.
they say the funniest things, but I mean, it wasn't one of those embarrassing. It was a funny thing, and I can't think if Lauren and Lindsay ever said anything when they were little like that, or mixed words up or
Well,
meanings or
like
anything.
this, when you're trying to think of something, you can't never
You
think
can't.
of it.
Right. Right.
After it's over, you can think of things, well, I should have said this or that, but
Okay, so
Y'all
now
just
that the
don't let
cameras are off,
don't let nobody else no hear mine.
so you were married twice.
Right.
Uh, Rita told the story about the little pregnant doll.
Teddy bear.
Oh, really?
Yeah, do you? That was you, wasn't it?
I
Yeah.
don't
That
remember.
she was telling on, made you go and get the. She had somebody make
They were gonna
a
make
wedding doll. You were getting married. And she was
Oh,
pregnant.
I've still got the doll.
So was that your first husband?
No, that was the last one.
Oh, were you pregnant? Oh, okay.
No.
I was like,
That's why they did that.
okay,
Well,
Oh,
see,
okay.
her sister,
okay.
Rita's
That makes it even
sister,
I was
funnier.
thinking
Actually,
that's
did that. Oh,
just when the
good
cameras
timing.
went off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna use the restroom.
let me see y'all. Hello. Hello. Hello.
I'm trying to get Ouida McCarter. Have I got the right number?
Yes, you have.
Hey, Ouida, this is Sue Glenn. Have I caught you at a bad time, or can you talk?
Yes, you have, really. I have company.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, what's a good time that I could talk to you?
Uh, Later on this afternoon.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Uh-huh. Bye-bye. What she's wanting. That's a lady from town, Sue Glenn. I don't know if y'all know her or not. She's, let's see, what street is it she lives on? I can't remember. It's just off of the 145. It's the same street that goes out to Landmark. That's what it is.